Can you break it down in simple terms what's been happening?
Okay, so Venezuela is a country that has experienced some turmoil, as we know, some political turmoils in the past years. And also, Venezuela is the largest, I won't say producer, but owner of oil, crude oil, globally in the world. So the oil reserve in Venezuela, they're estimated to be around 20% of the world reserve, so which makes them the largest country in the world. Now the oil in Venezuela, it's the one that people in the industry, they call the sour oil, because it has a high content of sulfur and makes the crude oil a little bit of a lower quality compared to the sweet oil, or Brent, the way that we call it in economics, which is less dense than the sour oil. So because of these issues, so the sour oil, it's bought at a discounted compared to the Brent oil, which may seem a good news because it's a cheaper product, costs less. However, the oil needs to be refined, and so the refining costs are much higher, which they will offset the discount. So that's in terms of the value. Now, the other problem is that when we look, and most of consumers, I believe, they worry about how much they're going to pay, how it's going to impact this deal when they pump gas. And so we should make a really clear distinction here about the way that the price transmits from the crude oil, the global oil industry, when it comes to the level of the retail gasoline. So in other words, there are several intermediate markets in between. So, and even though the price is set there, and often if you look at the oil industry, it's not really a competitive market, because we have very few, well, we have about probably 200 countries which produce oils, but there is a small group of those, which are large oil producers, that they can somehow coordinate the price. They're not always successful, but they often do. And so when Venezuela, in the case of Venezuela, has this large reservoir of oil, but at the same time, the amount that supplies globally is actually very small. It's about between 1% and 2%. So it's pretty small because we have limits on infrastructures, sanctions we saw in the past years. So in economics, usually we saw that both in history and also the present, that conflicts, geopolitical issue can disrupt the supply chain of oil from the crude oil until all the retail at gas station for consumers too. Now, when it comes to the crude oil again, because Venezuela is not a large supplier, so it does have that ability to really affect the price of crude oil. And if you notice in the past 3 years, probably we reached the peak in 2022. The oil was priced almost slightly over $100 per barrel. And now today we are about $63 per barrel, so it's really dropping. And if you look also at the price of gasoline, this has been now in 2025, the third consecutive year where the price of gasoline has been changing. So now the question is, does oil determines the price of oil global determines the price of gasoline? Yes, probably it starts there, all the channel. However, we need to start to consider also oil gets, okay, we have the reservoir of oil in Venezuela and it needs to be transported to the refineries. So then it's first market there. Then once reached the refinery, that's another market. There are several refineries that compete to purchase oil. So refineries also, they face capacity, cost. So perhaps they need to filter the sulfur oil. And here in the Gulf Coast, actually, we have refineries that they are equipped with that type of procedure to process the lower quality crude oil like the Venezuelan one. So that's good news. So then after that, when it gets to the retail level, consumers in reality face price changes of gasoline almost every day, right? So at least weekly. And what really determines the price at retail level among different gas stations, so are really the availability of regional suppliers is one of those, as well as competitive dynamics. In fact, if you notice many gas stations, they are close to each other and they stay the same price. So even though at the origin the oil market is not a competitive market, but when we come down, when price transmits and goes across the different channels of the oil supply chain or the gasoline supply chain, so that becomes fairly competitive. So after we make this distinction, there is clearly a relationship, but I won't expect myself, to be quite honest, that there are going to be dramatic price swings in the gasoline price. So that's good news for consumer in either direction. So I won't expect that. Now, in the long term, assuming that the production of oil of Venezuela increases, of course, it's gonna take some time. Pretty sure investment in infrastructure investment in Venezuela first, and that could be a good news year for the Gulf Coast, for the economy in the Gulf Coast, because from Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, we're equipped with those refineries that they should be able to process sour oil. But everything comes with a cost, so that will be the environmental consequences. Because in the past decades, there has been also the industry of renewable energy that has been growing. And scientists, they've associated, in the past, they saw that the decline in fertility on the Western world could be associated with the large consumption of plastic. And if you look, our oceans are suffering, and I'm not talking about the oil spills that, they're rare, but they happen, those too. And we have been victim in the past of one of those. So what else I can tell you?
You've answered a lot of my questions, which is great. So thank you. I was going to ask, from an economic side, do you believe that both the U.S. and Venezuela could benefit, requiring Venezuela to buy American-made products in exchange for the oil?
Absolutely. It's one of the principles of economics that trade makes everybody better off. In Venezuela, they are specialized, they are lucky, they're endowed with this large reservoir of oil, and so they have a comparative advantage on that. And in the US, we are equipped, we have comparative advantage in the world with new novel ideas. So we create new technologies. That's why we are the leading countries in the world. And I'm pretty sure that the exchange between the two economies is going to benefit both of them in the long term.
Good. If this deal were to go into effect, today, how long do you think it would take to see some changes in our economy?
That's hard to predict, unfortunately, to make an accurate, intelligent predictions, because in economics, we create models, we use data, and so we are able to make some predictions, but it's going to be still margin of error. So I don't think I can answer this question.
That's okay. It's hard to say. So it might take some time for sure. People hear sometimes the word, foreign oil, and might worry about reliability. How stable? You kind of talked about this. Do you believe Venezuela is as a supplier?
Well, stable. Right now, I believe that it's ranked is in the bottom top 20 actually in the world as a supplier. So the US, we are the top supplier in the world. We supply about between 15 and 20 million barrels per day. If I recall correctly, Venezuela may be between 2 and 3 million barrels per day. So the issue there, I believe that that there is an infrastructural issues, and that could be also good news for the US, for investors to perhaps provide those infrastructures, create perhaps some jobs offshore also for Americans, engineers who are willing to work there. And then it would take some time to build, but the good news, once the infrastructure is built, so then this transaction they start to occur, and I believe that could be also benefit for the local economy in the Gulf Coast. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you for answering that. I think you pretty much answered everything that I was going to ask. Let's see. How would this deal possibly affect places like Canada, Mexico? if at all? Or Canada, our neighbors to the north?
I don't remember exactly how much oil Canada is currently taking from Venezuela. So, and I know that there are tariffs as well. So I'm not sure I can answer this question.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I was just going to throw that out
yeah.
there. That wasn't super
Yeah.
relevant to the story. I think that's it. Yeah, I guess, bottom line, you said it will take time to possibly see changes from something like this. This is very unique. I know this doesn't happen every day, right, in our economies.
Yes.
So, as an economics professor watching this, what was your immediate reaction to all of that? Were you surprised?
I was not surprised. I thought that was something, the economy, the world economy is changing, globally, and, we're facing, unfortunately, it's an energy intensive driven economy, and I don't want to go off topics, but we have another issues of the data centers that they require lots of energy. Living in Virginia hosts most of the data centers in the US, and the amount of electrical power used by data centers compared to the electrical power used by like small countries, European countries even, just to run those data centers. So with the rise of AI, that I don't think that it's a reversible historical process. It's like the Industrial Revolutions. It's a new one, so I don't think we can go back. And so, the energy environment, it's very interesting. There's going to be lots of challenges to face in the future, but also there are going to be good news because we also have alternative sources of energy that can either complement, eventually substitute oil, because oil is a finite resource. At one point, in probably
right.
a few hundred years,
yeah.
it's going to end.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, very good. As a professor, I know students are not here right now, but I'm sure that this will be a conversation and a topic in your classrooms when they come back in a few days.
Yes.
Is this a great teaching moment for people in your class?
Oh yes, and especially in the class with the students, something we call experiential learning, and we make them do projects related to things that happen, collect data, compare countries and cost of living, energy costs, and so on. And it's an excellent time where the students, they can really apply what they learn in class, and perhaps those things that they will learn now, they will probably stick long term because they're experiencing that, and so they're learning how to process the news and collect the data and come with some conclusion on their own.
Yeah.
And so really I believe it's fostering this year at the University of South Alabama critical thinking is helping us this time.